All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our week 3 webinar. If this is your first time joining us, what we're doing this summer for 8 weeks straight is we are thematically clustering different onboarding tasks to get us going, to help you, your students get ready for the start of the academic year. And so if you've missed week 1 or week 2, we encourage you to go back to our website and check out those videos. We'll actually get last week's videos should be posted later on today. So I encourage you to go back and check that out. And I also want to look forward to next week. Next week, we have a special one where it's by the students for the students. So our own Colin Bloom will be leading a student panel to talk about the student experience. And so that one's for students. Next week, parents, we encourage you to sit that one out. We want that one just to be for students that feel comfortable to ask questions. And there'll be a true Zoom call where we'll have the different, everyone's faces will be on the screen. We will not record next week's because we want people to feel like they can share openly and not feel like they're going to have their faces recorded on our website. So next week, we're not going to record. So I just want to highlight that again. So I encourage all the students to definitely be on that call next Tuesday at 1 o'clock. But let's talk about today. We've got some great people on the call for you today. My name is Jonathan Manns. I work with the First Year Experience Office. We also have Melanie McManaman, our coordinator, as well as Colin Bloom, our fantastic student director. And our special guest today is the amazing Francesca Span from the Campus Living Office. So before we turn it over to Fran, I would like Melanie to highlight what we have going on this week for our tasks, as well as recapping last week.
So just a quick recap of last week's tasks. Hopefully you've maybe taken a look at these. First up being that you should, let's hopefully start that Office of Student Accessibility Housing Accommodations process. That is if you are seeking an accommodation specifically for housing. The other thing that is on our checklist, that was on our checklist last week, and I would like to just make a comment about it. We are currently transitioning to a new system for tracking immunization records. So because of that, we have to postpone inputting immunization dates a little bit. We're hoping that you can wait until July 8th. This is posted on our website, but hoping to wait until July 8th to log into the health portal while we work on the transition to that new system. And then also the online wellness courses, which is something that is not available yet, but you definitely want to get that done by September, definitely before your spring course registration, or you won't be able to register for classes in the spring. This week we have one task, and it's very important, and it's why our guest is here from Campus Living. It is to submit your housing application. That application is due on Sunday, June 30th. And with that, I am going to pass it over to our special guest, and I'm going to give Fran control to change the slides as needed. Oh, and really quick also, as we are speaking, feel free to post in the Q&A throughout the webinar. We will be checking out and reading. We might even be responding as people are presenting. And then at the end, we will go through all questions that we've gotten throughout the webinar. And if there are some that haven't been answered, we'll answer them at that time. Okay, Fran, it's on you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan, Melanie, and Colin, for having me here. And thanks everyone for joining us. My name is Francesca Span. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an alum of the college, so I went here for undergraduate, and I now work in the Office of Campus Living. My title is Daily Operations Manager, which means I handle a lot of different aspects of the residential experience when it comes to assignments, room changes, and a lot of processes that make sure our halls are up and running the way that they need to be. I'm going to be using my time here on today's webinar to discuss important information that you as a new resident will need to be aware of when it comes to housing applications, as well as speak a little bit more generally about what it means to live on campus, and then answer any questions you might have, whether that is about our residence halls, meal plans, or the housing application that, as Melanie mentioned, is due at the end of this week. So I'm going to kick off by jumping into the important dates that you should have on your radar when it comes to completing your housing applications and making sure all your materials are in for our assignment process. So at this time, we have launched the housing application, the housing accommodations process, and our living learning community applications. If you have not done so already, it is in your best interest to log into our housing portal and submit your application. And as Melanie mentioned, if you believe that you might need an accommodation for on-campus housing, whether that's for a room without stairs and ADA access or a single room, and there's a plethora of other types of accommodation needs students might have. That is a process you will definitely want to jump on and start if you have not done so already. And we also have living learning communities throughout our different residential areas and buildings that allow folks to live with others with a shared common interest. So if you are interested in a living learning community, more information about them will be touched upon later in this presentation. Now, our deadline for upcoming dates, I know that forms have said June 30th. In full transparency, we will officially cut things off at noon on July 1st, just so that when we come into the office on Monday morning, if there's any last minute questions, we can help students out. But don't wait until July 1st at 9 a.m. Do try and make sure that you apply and submit that application sometime during this week so we have some time to follow up with you if you do have questions. Now for our living learning applications, those will close on July 1st, and we review LLC applications and send out acceptance emails on July 8th. And we give students 1 week to accept their placement into an LLC. Most students do accept their LLC placement, but sometimes after going through that application process and finding a roommate, you might decide that you are no longer interested in that LLC. So we want to give you the opportunity to confirm or deny that placement. Finally, the day that a lot of students are looking forward to is going to be August 2nd. That is our housing assignment email that will go out to all of our new students and let you know where you're living next year, as well as who your roommate is. And we'll include some other information like links to a residential handbook and some notes about move-in and making it to campus. All right. Can someone help me get to the next slide? Thank you. When it comes to fall, I know that some people are planners out there, so I just wanted to highlight some important dates about the fall semester. If you are a fall athlete, we are anticipating your early arrival on campus. We understand that fall athletes do need to practice for D3 requirements. So mid-August is when we are expecting your arrival. Now, if you have questions about your arrival, your best point of contact is going to be your coach. Oh no, we lost Melanie. I'm just gonna keep it going and we'll get the slides back up and running. August 20th through the 22nd is when we are going to see students who are participating on NSTs come to campus. And so if you're participating in an NST, this is by far the most asked question we get is, what happens when I arrive to campus for my NST and I have a lot of my things? If you're showing up between the 20th and the 22nd, any items that you don't need to take on your NST trip will be stored by College Outdoors in one of their warehouses. And when you return from your trip on the 27th of August, you'll be able to take all of your items out of their storage and move right into your residential room. You will not be able to access your residence hall room between the 20th and the 22nd. So just keep that in mind. As I mentioned, the 27th is when we will see our new students return from their NST trips, and the 28th is going to be NSO move-in for the rest of our new students. And that is also the start of parent and family preview. there are the dates of NSO from August 28th to the 1st. But when it comes to housing, I just wanted to make sure we covered some of our breaks. The 10th through the 13th is fall break. Our residential halls are open during the fall break. Students do not need to apply to remain on campus for those days. Our Thanksgiving November break is going to be from the 28th to the 1st. Again, the residence halls are open during break and students do not need to apply to stay during the break. But once we hit the end of the semester, come December, the halls do close, and students who want to live on campus during the winter break are welcome to do so, but they do need to submit a winter break housing application, and there is a fee for living on campus over the winter break. Finally, I just want to mention that a list of important dates as they relate to housing can be found on the Campus Living website, and I will have someone drop this link into the chat in case you want to be able to read more about our important housing dates in the next coming year. Alrighty, now I'm going to jump in and talk about the housing application and make sure students are clued in on how they can apply for on-campus housing. Now, all of our students who are living with us next year, which is all incoming students, as we do have a residency requirement, unless you are commuting or you are an incoming transfer who has kind of aged out of the residency requirement. So for all of you who fall into the new students who are not commuters, we do expect you to submit a housing application, and we are anticipating housing you on campus. Now, all applications for housing will happen through our housing portal. These links have been sent to you via email and should be available to you in the first year checklist. And to log into our portal is similar to how you log into your email account. So you'll use your LC24- email password to gain access to the housing application. Next slide. On the housing application itself, the application isn't too long, but I would say to carve out about 30 minutes to complete the housing application itself. We have students read a lot of information about residential housing, your experience, things that you should be aware of when it comes to the contract and important dates. And it's also where we ask you a lot of questions about yourself and how you're hoping to live and who you might want to live with. If you ever have questions about navigating the different aspects of the application, we do have a how-to guide on our website. Next slide. And if you ever need to reference that help page or that how-to guide, you can do so on our website. Under our applying for housing tab, you'll see that we have a few extra links, one that will get you to the housing portal, but one that will also bring you to the how-to page, both for applying in general, as well as forming a roommate group as a new student. All right. I just touched upon this on the different things that you'll see in the housing application. It is reading up on a lot of parts of our process and the residential experience. It's where you'll provide us details about yourself. Importantly, it is where you will sign the housing contract, as well as how you will be able to form a roommate group. Forming a roommate group is optional. We find that about 50 to 60% of new students want to form a roommate group and about 50% don't. It is totally up to you. If you don't pick a roommate, that is totally okay. We will take part of that process and assign you a roommate if you do not form a roommate group. And then at the end of the application cycle, you will be able to select a meal plan for the coming year. Next slide, please.
Hi. How can I help? Who needs to be made a host to the moment?
Hi, sorry for interruption, everyone. We're in the middle of the webinar. If you could make the rest of us on the panel host, please. Melanie's having computer issues. Thank you.
All right.
Brandon, please feel free to continue.
Okay. I was just going to continue with a little bit more information on forming roommate groups. As I mentioned, it is optional. Not every new student forms a roommate group, but you can form one on the portal with 1, 2, or 3 other individuals, depending on if you want to be in a larger style of room with other folks. If you are not seeing options that you were hoping to see when it comes to the number of other students looking for a roommate, our suggestion to you is to return to the roommate group builder. You can complete the rest of the application, but come back into the portal to continue building a roommate group and seeing other folks who are maybe applying a little bit later in the month than those who were really on top of it right after the application launched. Next, I'm going to jump in and talk more about housing accommodations. As we mentioned previously, we do have an upcoming deadline in the middle of July when it comes to housing accommodations. And this is something that isn't universal for all students, but those who need housing accommodations should definitely partake in this process as soon as possible in order to have your accommodations met. So there are a few different types of housing accommodations. Some go through the Office of Student Accessibility, and those are going to be disability-related student accessibility for disability-related accommodations. And then there are also faith-based accommodations that a student would work directly with the office or the Center for Spiritual Life to create. Accommodations that are created and confirmed after the July 15th deadline will be added to a wait list for placement. We are usually able to book people into their accommodations after a deadline, but it is in your best interest to get everything confirmed before we hit July 15th. Now, I just wanted to make sure that we shared a few examples of those housing accommodations. They can look different person to person, and that is something that OSA will work directly with a student on. But as I mentioned earlier, ADA accessibility, single rooms, visual fire alarms, handrails near toilets, all of these are things that we see students have accommodations written for. And I just want to make this very clear to all of our incoming students that new students are not eligible for single rooms unless they have an accommodation for a single room. So if you're hoping for a single room, it will not be eligible to you for your first year on campus unless you have that accommodation written. So just keep that in mind as you are starting to think about how you are living next year. All right, next slide, please. Great. I mentioned this earlier, living learning communities definitely play a large role in our residential experience. We have 9 living learning communities, but there are 7 living learning communities that new students will be eligible for during the 24-25 academic year. The living learning community application, as I mentioned, is currently open and accepting applications. And you are welcome to learn more about these living learning communities on our website. They span a wide array of interests, and they have a connection to different academic departments or offices on campus. And if you are having trouble trying to choose just one LLC, or you might preference wanting to live in one building but are still interested, you can always apply as an out-of-house member, in which you'll receive emails and invites to their programming, even if you aren't physically living within the bounds of that LLC. So just something to keep in mind as you start to consider what a living learning community involvement might look for yourself. And finally, I just want to throw this out there. Our Visual and Performing Arts LLC is very, very popular. Feels very Lewis and Clark. And so if you are hoping to apply for VAPA, just keep in mind that that is such a popular LLC that there are some restrictions on being able to pull in a roommate who had not also applied for VAPA. So just keep that in mind when you're forming roommate groups. We give people the ability on the portal to list out which LLCs they're applying for. So just make sure that you're in communication with your potential roommate if you have a potential roommate in mind about that VAPA application. Next slide, please. All right, just a quick touch on meal plans. Meal plans are required for all of our on-campus residents. There are different meal plan options. So depending on your diet needs or how much food you might need to consume throughout a day or a week, there are a few different meal plan options. And while you are required to select a meal plan on the portal, And we ask that you get that done by that July 1st deadline. You will have the ability to change your meal plan up until 5 p.m. on September 5th, or the first Friday of the month or of the academic semester is the deadline to change your meal plan. You can do so on the portal, or you can email living@lclark.edu, and we are happy to change your meal plan for you. Next slide. Okay, now we are talking more on the move-in and the arrival on campus. I did touch on this earlier, so apologies for being a bit redundant. When it comes to your arrival on campus, FYE, so the folks who are facilitating this webinar, will be sending out information to new students about shipping items to campus, as well as your mail stop code or your MSC number that both yourself and family and friends are able to send items to during your time here at the college. That MSC, which is a bit like a PO box, will persist with you during your time here at the college. So keep an eye out on your email a little bit later in July for that shipping information. As I mentioned, you might be an early arrival student depending on if you are part of a sport team. So please follow up with your coach for information about that. The same goes for those participating on an NST arrival. We will be all ready and prepared for your check-in, but more information about move-in usually comes from those different offices who are greeting a large number of early arrival students to campus. Next slide. Okay. Finally, I think before we wrap up and open for questions, I just want to make sure that folks are aware of how they can be in communication with Campus Living, as well as how Campus Living acts moving forward when it comes to communicating with our students. The best way to get a hold of us, especially during the summer, is to send us an email. This is my plea to check and review your email every single day. It is going to be a great habit to get used to during your time in college. And we, every single day, are responding to emails from the living@lclark.edu email. Myself and other members of our central office team monitor that inbox. And if there's ever a question that needs to get routed to someone else, we are there to help you out. You're also welcome to give us a call. We're in office Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 4 p.m. And we try and answer our voicemails as frequently as possible. Once you make it to campus, you are welcome to also drop by our office for a face-to-face interaction. It's also where you will come if you are locked out of your room during the school year when we are open during our business hours. And that place is called the Odell Annex. Once you make it to campus, we are just right across from the main dining hall and very easy to find. During the year and once new students have started classes on campus, some different federal laws snap into place in which our ability to communicate with parents, guardians, and others who are not the student does kind of restrict us. And so we always lead with students as our focal point for communication, whether that be about a room change, a housing need, or just a general question. So just a note for all the parents out there, we are happy to talk with you once it is the school year and over the summer. But once some of those federal laws come in place, we have to talk in a more general sense and can't always discuss personal information as it relates to your student and their housing specifically. And finally, just noting that we want to be collaborative. We work with a lot of different campus partners, and we understand that different parts of your housing might draw on different housing or different offices outside of just housing, for example, OSA and spiritual life. And so we, throughout the year, make the effort as we can to pull people in to have these conversations and make sure you are being successful, both academically and residentially. Next slide, please. Okay, this was from some of my old webinars. I do want to give a shout out to Campus Living's Q&A sessions. FIE is doing a fantastic summer series as it relates to the first year checklist, but we also know that there's a lot of questions when it comes to living on campus. So I just wanted to post this here to make you aware of some of Campus Living's summer webinars. We have been hosting these on Friday from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. And we're just trying to cover different topics that come up pretty frequently from our new students. So this coming Friday, we just have a general Q&A session. So any questions you don't get answered here or maybe pop up in the next few days, you are welcome to join us this Friday and ask any questions that you might have. So just wanted to make sure I was plugging some of our future campus living Q&A sessions. And with that, I think that we are all ready to answer. I'm ready to answer any questions that folks in this webinar might have.
Great, Fran. I'm glad you're ready because we have some for you. And I just want quick, you did great, Fran. Pivoting as needed. Apologies to everyone listening. We had the person hosting our slides, computer crashed a few times, and so that's why the slides disappeared and reappeared. So thanks for being flexible, everyone. Fran, some of these are earlier questions, so you may have answered them later on in your session, but it probably bears repeating. I'm sure people would appreciate it. But the very first one is, there's okay, I'm going to read out the long acronym. And what does the P stand for in this acronym? The LGBTQ+TQIA++ in the housing portal. Curious what the second P stands for.
Yeah, good question. You know, I would have to verify. I believe that some of those as it comes to our gender inclusive housing library, we pulled from other resources. The P in LGBTQIA+ either stands for the plus or sometimes stands for pansexual. There's a lot of different ways that those acronyms come together. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. What if we're trying to get a single? What then?
Yes. So if you are trying to live in a single room, you will need to follow up with the Office of Student Accessibility to create that accommodation as a first-year student. Any of our new students entering in the fall of 2024 will not be eligible for singles unless they have that accommodation. So make sure that you are using some of the next couple of days or the next week to create an appointment with OSA to start the conversation. You will have to have a provider, a medical provider, complete some paperwork with their office. So some of the elements that kind of stop the OSA process from moving forward is the delays from providers and their turnaround time with OSA. So keep that in mind. But otherwise, if you do not have a disability related need for a single, you should anticipate on having a roommate or two.
And Fran, the person asked a follow-up a few more down, so I'll just ask now. They still complete the housing application like everyone else, correct? They just need an additional accommodation appointment.
Exactly, yeah. So everyone, regardless of their accommodation status, will need to apply for housing and sign the housing contract.
Wonderful, thank you. So how long do we have how long do the students have to connect with roommate groups? And is that due on the 30th as well?
Yes, so students have until now and when the application closes to build their roommate groups. Once we hit that deadline, we will close the roommate group builder on the portal as we will need to start working on assignments. That being said, if you connect with someone a day or two after and you are hoping to live with them, send living@lclark an email and we'll see what we can do when it comes to booking you in with a desired friend, even if you didn't form that roommate group on the portal.
All right. If I get accepted into a living learning community, does it change who my roommate is that I put in the housing portal?
Great question. So the only one that would change who your roommate is would be if you're accepted into VAPA and your roommate is not accepted into VAPA. We usually have the capacity to host you and your roommate in a living learning community, even if they did not apply. But VAPA tends to be very, very popular with its application numbers, and that is our one stipulation. But if, for example, you want to live in teacher or aspiring educators, and your roommate didn't apply, we would be able to host both of you and aspiring educators.
Great. Let's see if you can handle or you can answer this, or if we need to involve college outdoors. But are items secured and safe to leave while away on the new student trip? Should we worry about leaving valuable? Let me try it one more time. Should we worry about leaving valuable things behind, such as laptops?
A great question. I receive this often. My understanding is that College Outdoors uses their warehouse, and once items go in there from NSTs, it gets locked and it is secured. I have not heard of anything going missing or anything getting touched within that warehouse once it is locked up. And students are definitely coming and leaving their laptops and not bringing those with them on their NSTs. So I would anticipate that your items would be totally safe while you are away on your NST trip.
You. We have a question about the Outdoor Pursuits Living Learning Community application, asking if it's open or when will it open?
Yeah, so the Outdoor Pursuits application is absolutely open. It's nestled within our larger living learning community application. So as long as you can navigate to the LLC application, you will definitely be able to mention that you want to live in college or the Outdoor Pursuits living learning community. And I will have Colin or maybe Jonathan post a link to the LLC form for the participants on this chat to access.
Great, yeah, we can do that. If I'm the one who has to do it, once we're done with the questions, I'll go back and add that in there. Try to remind me, Fran, if I have it by the time we're done. It's a great question there. Okay, I've got a question here about housing application. This person can see the quote, how to apply for housing, but not the actual application. And then the second part of the question is they're still waiting on getting the grades from their schools. That's fine. There's some schools that are just now getting out, high schools are just getting out, people just graduating. Certainly send those into admissions as they come in. But it just, I don't think so. But Fran, does it sending grades in impact the ability to apply for housing?
No, it does not. As long as you have created your lclark.edu account, you are absolutely able to apply for housing. We let admissions in the registrar's office follow up with students about transcripts, grades, and anything related to credits and high school. As long as you got that lclark.edu account set up, you are absolutely able to apply for housing. As for kind of addressing the how do I apply for housing, that will be on the housing portal. Your student will need to log into the housing portal, but I'll make sure a link to that gets you directly to the housing portal is also shared in this webinar.
Yeah. And if you are someone who hasn't created your LCA account, one, encourage you to do that right away. But two, it may take up to one business day for the other systems on campus to recognize that accounts been created in those systems, including the housing application, to be updated so you have access. This individual is being prompted about housing insurance. How do I know my address for appropriate coverage?
Great question. You're able, I believe you should be able to leave that field blank, or you can use the more general college address. And once you have your official assignment or receive your official MSC number, you should be able to update that address with the Grad Guard insurance. I'm assuming you're referring to the Grad Guard insurance option that is kind of nestled within our housing application. And just a quick note is that that insurance covers you even if you were to be studying abroad or during the winter break when you're not physically on campus. So just keep that in mind, that that insurance can follow you regardless of that exact address.
All right, for the next question, I can answer part of it. The question is about the Creative PDX NST new trip, asking how early they can arrive and how much time they have to set up before leaving for the trip. Well, this is the one new student trip that actually takes place on campus, so you don't leave. You actually stay in your room. Your sleeping quarters is your residence hall assignment. But Fran, you want to tackle a question about how early they can arrive?
That is actually going to be information that College Outdoors will or the Creative Arts PDX trip will share with you. That being said, if you're asking kind of what time of day you're able to move in, typically those events start their check-in around 8 a.m., if not a little bit later in the day. I would reach out to them for some of their more specifics in terms of when they anticipate your arrival.
Right. the first day of your trip, whatever the date that is, would be the day that you would move in.
Yes, yeah.
Great. Are the beds extra long?
Yes, all of the beds that new students are eligible for are twin XLs. So you will
You're
need
great,
new
Fran.
sheets.
Yeah. Bring extra sheets is what she said. I just cut her off by accident. But Fran, you're doing great. Thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah, of course.
And great questions, everyone. I want to make sure you get all your questions answers. I appreciate you putting in there. And even if you're not answering questions, hopefully you're hearing these responses and you're finding them helpful too. Oh, we just answered this question already. So about a single room, that's answered. What's the deadline to form a roommate group?
The deadline to form a roommate group will be July 1st at 12 p.m., kind of that same deadline by which we want your housing application submitted. But as I mentioned earlier, if you find a roommate, 1 p.m. on July 1st, you're welcome to send us an email, but we will close off the roommate group building part of the portal at 12 p.m. on the 1st.
All right. And would you know, off the top of your head, what percentage of the student body is part of a living learning community? Maybe the better way to frame that is what percentage of those who live on campus are part of the living learning community?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have about 1,500 residential residents living with us, students living with us. I would say we have about, I'd have to do the exact math on that. I'd say between any given year, about 175 to 250 students apply for living learning communities. I'm terrible at fast math. What is that, like 15% maybe? Something around there, I think would be about where we are at with those who live within LLCs.
Great. Thanks for being willing to be put on the spot with that math question. Colin was nodding affirmation, so without taking a calculator out, he's at least saying you're pretty close. We have an international student who's going to arrive on this 26th. And international student orientation does start a little bit early. That's great. Will they be able to eat on their meal plan by then?
Great question. So your meal plan won't kick in until the Sunday before classes, but we definitely feed our students when they arrive early, which is why if you're a part of an early arrival group, they will be doing the outreach with you directly and they will feed you meals. So the answer is yes, you will be able to be fed. And in this case, international students and scholars will be paying for your early arrival meals and will coordinate your dining needs directly with the dining service on campus. And the same goes for fall athletes and those who are on both on-campus NSTs and the off-campus NSTs. You will be fed.
Mm-hmm. And I want to add on to what Fran said about with the meal plan starting that Sunday before classes begin. All students, all incoming new students, because you're participating in new student orientation that starts August 28th, all your meals are provided through orientation. So really, you could say in a way your meals are going to start on the 28th. You don't necessarily see the switch being flipped behind the scenes to activate your meal plan on Sunday. You'll still swipe your card. Would you tap or swipe a card, your ID card for meals, just like you will during an academic year. All right. If both members in your roommate group apply for VAPA, what happens if both members don't get in? Do you get unattached from your potential roommate, or you just both get in or not get in?
So if you were both accepted into VAPA, we'd place you into VAPA. If neither of you were accepted into VAPA, we would keep you as a roommate group and place you somewhere else. And if it was a situation in which only one of you were eligible for VAPA, we would have to wait and see how many other people either accept or reject their VAPA acceptances and see if there is space to pull you in, or we would give you the option depending on if you want to split that roommate group if that person who was accepted prioritizes VAPA over the roommate group or the roommate group over VAPA. And so that's just unfortunately where we have to be a little bit dynamic and flexible with how we outreach to students, but we would give people in that group, if there was kind of a difference in their acceptances, some time to figure out what is going to be their preferences moving forward.
Great. Okay, are there any deposits or fees related to the summer and deadlines associated with those? When do I pay for my meal plan?
I did not hear your first part of that
Oh,
question.
sorry. Any deposits or fees related to the summer? I'm not sure if that's specific to housing or just in general. Any deadlines with those fees? And when do I pay for my meal plan?
Got it. Thank you. Okay, so new students are not required to pay a housing deposit. We consider your deposit with admissions part of our housing deposit, as we figure if you deposit to come here, you are planning on living with us, unless you're a commuter. So no need to worry about a deposit. As for both your room and board charge for this upcoming year, those room and board charges will be reflected on your student accounts summary, your tuition statement starting in July. Students have from, I believe it's July 8th through the deadline in August to either pay their tuition statement or create a payment plan with student accounts. So the timeline by which you need to pay will be sometime in August, but it is going to be up to you and those who you might be working with, like a parent or guardian, to set up a payment plan. To get your tuition statement settled. Campus Living assesses room and board charges, but we do not actually participate in collecting any money from students. So your best way to kind of move forward with any questions you might have about payment plans or housing charges will be with the student accounts services.
Great. Fran, could you go over how overflow housing works?
Yeah, that is a great question. So the past 2 years, we have had to offer overflow housing. What overflow housing is where we take a room space that's usually designated for a certain number of students, and we do add a bed and some other furniture to those spaces to be able to accommodate extra residents within our halls. We are in the position where we are not planning or needing to host overflow housing for 24-25. So at this time, based off of our returning resident numbers and our new student numbers, we do not have any plans to overflow any of our residential buildings or rooms. We did include that information in the portal just in case our numbers had changed when we hit the June 1 admissions deadline. But as of right now, we do not plan on having overflow housing, but we did include that as well as a preference when it comes to room type to see how interested incoming students would be in that room type should we need to offer it. But we are not currently planning on offering it, which I'm excited about.
Yes, that. All right, we have a follow-up. If you go back to that question earlier about accommodation for a single room. So follow-up question to that, if they're gonna seek out accommodations for a single room, they're still filling out the standard housing application. What do they do about the roommate preference section in that housing application?
Yeah, good question. That's a great question. So when you hit the room preferences, you'll not see single rooms as an option on that drop down. So instead, you can just use the double rooms as your option and then use them as a building preference. So Copeland double, we would view once we have your confirmed housing application that this individual would be preferencing a single in Copeland. We work directly with OSA to receive the list of approved accommodations and then just use those buildings that you put on the housing portal as your preferences. And if you are working with OSA on a single room accommodation, I would suggest that you not form a roommate group. If your accommodation isn't confirmed or you can't move forward with that accommodation, we would then work on assigning you a roommate.
Fantastic. Does Campus Living provide a checklist for items that new students should bring for the residence hall room or any other things that they should bring to come to college?
Yes, this information I want to say is actually on the FYE website. I could be wrong, but there is a list of both things that we as a campus suggest that you bring, but also things that we suggest you don't bring. Let me see if I have a link to this, but I think it is actually on the FYE webpage, and we can drop a link in the chat for this information.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
it's actually on the FYE page rather than the new student web page. So definitely take a look on that. It is under the Getting Started drop down on the FYE website.
Great. While you're doing that, I'll follow up on a few. Someone else asked about percentage of students that live in the living learning community. Our rough estimate, 15%. We think roughly around 200 to 250 maybe participate in the living learning community. Fran, you still looking for that, or you ready for
I
another
dropped
question?
it to you and the panelist. So you might, I don't think I have the ability to
Yeah.
post it to everyone who is a panelist or a participant here today.
Sure. I will answer. I'll ask you the next question, and then I'll put that in the question here in the Q&A area. I'll put that link that Fran has. Once your room is assigned, what are the odds things will change before move-in? Is there a chance double will become a triple, for an example?
Great question. So if whatever you receive on your housing assignment on August 2nd, it is not super likely that it's going to change unless you request a change with our office. If we assign you into a double room, we would not either plus that up to be an overflow room or shift you into a triple. But we do see some students after they receive their assignment request a different hall or request a different roommate who they connected with later in the summer. And so if we can accommodate that type of change, we will, but otherwise we do plan on whatever we send you out in early August is what we anticipate housing you in when you come later in August. That being said, I want to make one other note about room changes. We do allow students to change their room throughout the year. There is a bit of a process that we want you to work through depending on your reasons for a room change. But I want to make it clear to any new students out there, if you are, experiencing maybe not a great dynamic with your roommate or just something is off about your housing, there are folks who both live in the halls as student leaders and professional staff members who meet with students to talk about room changes. So if you do have questions about room changes after you have started living on campus, just know that there are resources out there who work with students, including myself, on those room change needs. And if you're ever having trouble trying to figure out who to go to, please email Living. We will help connect you with the right person. It always just feels discouraging when someone's like, oh, I didn't even know that was an option. So I just want to make that clear. It is an option. We can change folks' rooms. Things will maybe depend on what is open and what options are elsewhere on campus, but just keep that in mind, knowing that life happens and things change once you get to campus and realize that maybe the way you were hoping to live isn't actually the reality of what your life at college looks like. So just throwing that out there.
Wonderful, thank you. While you were talking, Fran, I was able to respond. One of the questions was about you give me some information about those Friday campus living Q&As. The link to that directly to those events were put in the Q&A. So if you anyone interested can open the Q&A, look to that link. It's also easy to find if you just go to Campus Living on Lewis and Clark website. That information is there as well. Fran, if my roommate did not apply to any LLC and I did, what would happen?
Yeah, great question. So if your roommate did not apply to an LLC, but you did, and it was not VAPA, it is very likely that we would be able to host you and your roommate in that living learning community. Again, it will, and this is where we just have yet to see our application for LLCs close and what our full demand for living learning communities is. Right now, based off of the numbers, we would be able to host everyone and their desired roommate into an LLC. And if we see more capacity or less capacity to have people bring in a roommate, we would reach out to you directly to let you know what is or is not going to be possible and give you that choice to move forward with either prioritizing that roommate or prioritizing that LLC placement and seeing what you would prefer and how we can accommodate.
Great. I want to just touch on a question that we just answered through written response, but just I think it's great for everyone to hear. This is more of a general question. But once your Lewis and Clark account is activated, and that would be your @lclark.edu email address, do you still get email on the email used for applications. No, all communication is starting right after June 1st, really. All our communications funneled to Lewis and Clark email address. So if you haven't created one, you're missing out on some important information. I really, really encourage you to do that today and get that taken care of. But no, we avoid using your personal Gmails and other things like that, because moving forward, our official mode of communication through the college is your Lewis and Clark email. That's how your faculty, your professors are going to email you, your advisors, campus living, first year experience, everything is through Lewis and Clark email. So we start that from the very beginning of the summer. So you get used to checking that. That should be a daily habit, if not multiple times a day. So everything happens at Lewis and Clark email addresses. All right, Fran, what is a flex meal plan? Is there a common plan that most students choose?
Yes, an excellent question. So we currently have 5 different meal plans that students can choose from, and the meal plans that new students are eligible for are the 14, the 14 Flex, and the 19. So the differences between these plans are going to be having flex points and then the number of meals you get to eat a week. So on the 14 plan, you get 14 meals a week. On the 19, you get 19 meals a week. And then on the 14 Flex, you get 14 meals a week, and then something called flex points. And flex points are kind of dollar equivalents that are loaded onto your tap card that can be used within our market and our coffee shops on campus. So if you want to buy a coffee or a bag of chips or a snack or a fruit cup, anything like that, you can use your flex points to do so rather than paying for cash. This is just really convenient to not have your wallet on you. You always need your tap card on you, so it's really easy to buy snacks and treats and coffee drinks. We do find that our most popular meal plan, both amongst first year students and other students on campus, is the 14 Flex. This plan, just in reference, that there are 19 meals served every single week, because on the weekends there's brunch. So just to keep that in mind, that would look like eating 2 out of 3 meals during the week and then both meals over the weekend. So it is really popular amongst our students, as their schedules don't always allow for eating every single one of those meals. And you can use flex points to always purchase one of those meals. If you're like, you know what, I'm feeling extra hungry today, I do want to eat breakfast. Usually I make it in my room. You could always flex point into the dining hall.
Wow. All right, Fran, this next question is good for you. And Colin, you might have some insight to share here, because you probably can relate to the situation. But do students who are traveling from out of state typically mail things to campus before they get there, bring in suitcases, or buy things in Portland, or buy a combination of those?
That's
a great question.
Colin, you take it away.
Sounds great. Thank you, Fran. Yeah. Being from Southern California, I have a lot of stuff to bring to college. Personally, I mailed all my stuff. I came with like 2 suitcases and a backpack, and I just mailed it up here. Yeah, I kind of left some of my like heavier winter clothing down at home until I came back up from Thanksgiving break. So just like when it's just kind of think of what you need until you go home for the next time.
I am also from Southern California, like Colin, and had a little bit of a different experience. I brought 2 suitcases and a backpack, but instead of shipping things to campus, I actually bought a lot of my stuff here in Oregon. There is no sales tax, so it is very nice and convenient to buy stuff once you're here in the state. So my mom and I rented a car and went to Target and Costco and some other places to buy things like bedding, because I had a twin bed at home, so my sheets weren't going to fit. And I wasn't exactly prepared for rain, so I also had to buy some nice winter and fall clothing. So the option is really up to you. The one thing to keep in mind if you send things to campus is you're going to have to collect them from the mailroom and bring them back to your room. But it is convenient if there's things that you know you don't need to rebuy and do want the convenience of having them ready for you on campus when you arrive.
Great insight, both of you. Thank you. Are you able to request a specific residence hall?
You are able to preference a residence hall. We aren't always able to guarantee which residence hall you're placed in, but on the housing application, you can give us as many preferences as you would like. We do our best to accommodate and place you where you prefer. Again, though, some places are more popular than others, and LLCs also have a factor into that. So if you are being very strategic, my suggestion to you would be to see where LLCs are located, apply for that LLC, and that will help really make sure that you are living in the area or the building that you preference.
Great, thank you. Another question about the Visual and Performing Arts LLC or VAPA. With VAPA being popular, does that mean Platt is also popular, which is the residence hall in which it's hosted? If you can't be placed in VAPA, is it still possible to live in Platt?
So we do host a number of rooms in Platt. So Platt is an interesting building. There's Platt East and Platt West. It's all one building. There's just two different wings. Platt West is all VAPA and part of Platt East is VAPA 2. We do host some non-VAPA rooms in Platt, but I would say that the majority of Platt is part of VAPA. Platt is popular. I'd say Platt Howard in general tends to be, I think a fairly popular residence hall. All of the rooms are double sized rooms with movable furniture, which people really enjoy. So I hope that's kind of helpful. It's a little bit hard to say because we have yet to kind of see those VAPA applications come in, or the deadline hasn't passed by which we start diving into that student data. But the answer to your question is yes, it is possible that you may get assigned to Platt or Howard, regardless of the VAPA LLC, if that is a place that you preference, and there is space available in Platt.
Great. All right, I'm actually going to tackle the next one. What happens at parent orientation? We call that parent and family preview. If my parents are able to go, will there be another way to get the information from parent orientation? Great question. So to fill in the blanks, parent and family preview begins the same day of new student orientation, which is that Wednesday, August 28th. It continues through Thursday, August 29th. It concludes on the 29th. We do a picnic for everyone, all the new students, as well as their parents and families. That's the last big event that everyone's together. And then we take the students off to the next orientation activity. We have a special reception for parents and families called Tissues and Toast. They will have our president and other folks there, and that'll be the final event of that. The short answer is no, we don't have that information necessarily to share out because there are a lot of live interactive sessions. We have a resource fair. And part of it is just experiencing the campus, so parents and family get an idea of what what their student experience would be like. So it's hard to share that in terms of online recordings and resources. So unfortunately, there's not an easy way to get that information out. Now we're happy to have phone calls over or Zoom sessions with any parents that want to talk more. We also have an office, our alumni and parent engagement, dedicated to parent engagement, so we can also connect you there if you're not able to make it but still want to just connect with one of us. We're happy to chat more. But I will take the opportunity to plug that event. It's a great opportunity for parents and families to just get experience a little bit of what we're doing at Lewis and Clark, get to meet some of the administration, the great people in alumni and parent engagement, and have a good time after you've dropped off your student and got them going in orientation. All right, Fran, can students use cash instead of flex points? This is really a meal plan question and a dining question.
Yes, absolutely. If you are not sure you want flex points, that's totally okay. You can pay card or cash at any of our dining locations on campus. If you also commit to a meal plan and either run out of your flex points or do decide you want to add flex points, you can always purchase them with Bon Appetit. Unused points from fall do roll over into spring, but they do not roll over from spring into the following fall. So just keep that in mind.
Great. How much does a double, I think it's a double room, cost compared to other room types?
Yeah, this is a great question. Right now, our rate structure is universal across our buildings and our specific room types. So our apartments do cost more and singles cost more, but doubles, triples, and quads are all on the same room rate. And for this coming year, the semesterly cost for a double, quad, or triple is $4,428.
Great, thank you. This person, you may have already mentioned this, they're a little late. Do quads have a main room with desks and then a separate bedroom? And also, maybe I think this is separately, can we request a lower floor? Probably, can we request a housing assignment on a lower floor of the building?
Yeah, great question. So the answer is it does depend a little bit on what building you are located in. That being said, the majority of our quads do have a separate sleeping room. There are 2 special unicorn quads within Forest that have 2 separate sleeping rooms and a smaller common area. But for the most part, yes, quads have a separate room with 2 bunked beds and then a larger space where the desks, the closets, and the other furniture is. So that helps create some privacy for those who might be sleeping versus the night owl who is up studying late into the evening. To answer your question about a lower floor, you're welcome to request this. My suggestion to you is to send an email to the living account, as there's not a great way to mention the desire for a lower level floor. So send living@lclark.edu an email to put it on our radar, and we'll do our best to accommodate. And just to mention, if you need a lower level floor for an accommodation purpose, like an accessibility need, I would suggest you work with OSA. They would definitely be able to write you an accommodation for a ground floor or first floor room, especially if it relates to mobility needs.
Wonderful. If we are accepted to a living learning community, do we find out our room and roommate at the same time?
Yes, yeah, everyone will find out their housing assignments, including their room and roommate, on August 2nd, and in that email or on that day is when you would also receive more information about your LLC placement.
Wonderful. There are a couple questions that come in about shipping items, address, and more information. We've answered that through typing with a link with a lot of helpful information there. So you have questions about shipping items at campus and time for move-in. I encourage you to go probably near the bottom of the answered questions in the Q&A section. A double and triple, are they the same cost?
A double and a triple do cost the same. I just want to make it clear that when we talk about triples, we're not talking about overflow triples. Overflow triples, which we are not planning on using, do have a discounted rate, but triples are built for 3 people and it is the same cost as a double room.
Great. And as of now, we may get our final question, Fran. Are flex points 1-to-1, or is there a discount using flex points? I mean, there's $1 equivalent. Is that equal to 1 flex point?
So when you go in to buy something, whatever the cost is, let's say a coffee is $3.50, it would cost you $3.50 or 3.5 flex points. But to answer your question in terms of is there a discount, it is cheaper to buy flex points rather than continuing to buy things at the cost that they are. I believe that if you also buy a certain number of flex points additionally outside of a meal plan, Bon Appetit does give you, I think it's like a 10 or 15% discount. So if you're interested in flex points, it's definitely makes sense for you to buy the flex point plan or buy some additional flex points to use throughout the year.
Yeah, so the discount's there when you purchase the flex points up front rather than when you're purchasing the food item. Yep. Great. Okay, a new one came in. Is the triple a same floor plan as a quad, but with 1 less bed?
So no, triples are different floor plans from quads. They are in between the size of a double and a quad, and there is not a separate sleeping space. We don't have very many triple beds. They are mainly within Copeland Hall. I think all of them are within Copeland Hall, actually. And the size of the rooms are larger than doubles, but not the same as quads.
Okay, wonderful. Fran, believe it or not, we have come to the end of the questions. Now, folks, if you still have a couple more, you're welcome to throw them in there. But Fran, thanks so much for taking the time to answer them. In case you're wondering, over 51 questions have been answered. Mostly by you. So wonderful job. we're gonna conclude by, thanks for getting this one in. We have a vegan worried about flex points being worth it for someone with dietary restrictions. I wonder who I could speak to about that.
Yeah, that is a great question. I will say here at Lewis and Clark, we do see a number of vegetarian and vegan students, and our dining hall definitely caters to their dietary needs. So for example, there's always going to be a vegetarian and vegan option within dining, as well as snacks in the market and at the coffee shops that are vegan. So if you're someone who is maybe a little bit unsure what it looks like for you to be dining on campus, it might not hurt to buy a non-flex option and purchase additional flex points, and then see if you want to change your meal plan for spring if you're feeling a little bit unsure about what that would look like. But if you're open to seeing what those dining options are, flex points might be a great thing to add on to your plan, especially if you're someone who drinks coffee or tea and plan on ordering that. There's always going to be dairy-free milk options and different yummy treats that will definitely be vegan. So I hope that helps answer that question.
Yeah, I would second with Francis. Just I've worked at several different college campuses, and Lewis and Clark is by far the most accommodating with different dietary needs, particularly when it comes to vegetarian and vegan. So I definitely follow the advice Fran gave. I believe you'll find lots of good accommodations when it comes to dining around campus here to meet your needs. Question about, one more time, the website area where you access the application for accommodations. So I believe they're talking about going to OSA or student accessibility.
Yeah, so there's not going to be a portal where you work with OSA. Instead, you're just going to connect directly with their office via meetings, emails, and Zoom. So if you are hoping to connect with them, you can either start by going to their website or sending them an email, and they will inform you on the next steps in the process. But the application for housing accommodations is not something you can apply for in our housing portal.
Great. So I'll take the next one. Is there a way to print the Q&A thread? That's a great question. I don't believe there is. From my experience, my recommendation would be, if there's some links here, to go ahead and click on them and open them on your tabs now, so they're open in your browser. Again, we'll post this as soon as we get a copy of it. It will likely be early next week, but we'll post it on our website to have all this information stored. But I unfortunately am not aware of a way to print Q&A. That's a really great thought I never thought of. We could share with Zoom to see if they might add that feature in the future. But unfortunately, there's not a way that I'm aware of right now with Zoom. Franny, can you quickly review the halls that are open to first-year students?
Yes, absolutely. So I guess a better way to actually approach this is what halls are not eligible for first-year students. So we do have one of our 5 residential areas called HHA, which stands for Homes, Hartsfield, and the Apartments, is not first-year student eligible, but the asterisk that I'm so sorry. The asterisk to HHA is that it is available to transfers depending on their incoming transfer status. So incoming first-year new students can live in Stuart Odell Aiken, Platt Howard, Copeland, and Forest Halls, and HHA is for sophomores and up. So if you're an incoming transfer student, you may be HHA eligible.
Another question: can you transfer flex points to other people, like you could transfer money in Venmo? And
I love that question. I've never actually received that before. But the answer is no, you cannot give someone your flex points, but you are definitely able to buy them items and give it to them, which is, yeah, happens all the time. Find yourself someone with extra flex points. It's Colin.
You can make
Are you
everyone
offering
happy.
to buy me ice cream, Colin? That's
So
what I'm
make
hearing.
everyone happy in the line to get coffee. I'll get the next 3 people behind me. Yeah. Is there a Zoom this Friday? I believe that's probably for a campus living Q&A session. Yeah.
Yes,
We'll post
it's
to
just
that
a
link
general,
earlier. Yeah.
yeah, general session doing more of this style Q&A.
If someone rents a mini fridge, but their roommate also has their own, do you share a mini fridge? I guess if they both are putting in for a mini fridge, They both have individual mini fridge, you share a mini fridge.
So you should definitely coordinate with your roommate so you're not renting too many fridges. There's technically space in your room. You can figure out a way to have too many fridges in there, but you probably just won't need it. There's also going to be fridges on every single community floor kitchen that you can put your stuff into if you label it. So I would just make sure that you're working in tandem with your roommate and perhaps just Venmo the cost, half the cost to the person who puts the money down for the fridge. Because I don't think that you will end up wanting or needing two of those mini fridges in your room.
Great. All right, we're at the end of the list now. We're going to kick it over to Melanie to peek ahead at next week. And if any more questions come in, Fran, we'll tackle them at the very end, which we're almost anyway. So, Melanie, if you're able, you want to come in and give us our reminders.
Yeah. Okay.
Unfortunately, Melanie, we only caught a little bit. You want to try one more time? If not, I'll cover for you.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can, yeah.
Okay. So just apologies for my technical difficulties on this end. And just kind of wrapping us up here, reminders for this week: submit your housing application due by Sunday. That's June 30th. This Sunday. You have less than a week. And then a little preview for next week. We mentioned Colin is going to be hosting a live, virtual meetup to get to know some student leaders and also get to know some fellow other new students coming to Lewis and Clark with you in the fall. And then the other task that we're going to ask you to complete, if you want to get a head start on it, you can access it already, and that is to submit your new student orientation info form. That has some different questions and information we're gathering just to make sure that the orientation experience is as complete and good for you when you come to visit us in the fall. And do we have one more final question?
We do. Fran, if we didn't choose a roommate in the portal, will they get a random one?
Yes, if you do not choose a roommate, we will assign someone to your room who aligns with your gender identity preferences and room profile information.
Wonderful. And Fran, one more time for us, plug your the email address for Campus Living.
Yes, it is just living@lclark.edu.
I will put that in the chat. I know there's lots of great questions related to Campus Living. Fran and her wonderful coworkers are happy to answer them if you're thinking of more questions after this is over. But thanks everyone for hanging in there. 63 questions answered. Well done on everyone's part. Everyone, we're delighted you participated with us today. Students, this next week is just for you. We really encourage you to attend with Colin and some of his buddies, hear about their student experience and getting their questions answered. I hope everyone has a lovely holiday next week as well. Just know the college will be closed on Thursday, July 4th. If you're trying to reach out to offices, we are open on July 5th, although admittedly a lot of people will be taking that day off. So just know you may get delay in responses if you're reaching out on July 4th or 5th of next week. I think that's everything. Thanks everyone for participating. We'll see you next week. Families, parents, we'll see you again in 2 weeks from now. If you need anything, you're welcome to reach out to firstyear@lclark.edu. We're happy to answer your questions that way as well. That said, everyone have a wonderful day. Take care. Thank you.